Sounds good. Well, good afternoon to our ACG members, along with all of our guests with us here today. We appreciate everyone joining us for our first virtual ACG Cleveland programming event. My name is Tom Liebig. I'm a partner in the Transaction Advisory Services practice at Grant Thornton, and we are the sponsor of today's event. For those of you who do not know us well, Grant Thornton is a global professional services firm supporting clients around the world on all aspects of advisory, audit, and tax needs. Grant Thornton is proud to be a longtime supporter of ACG Cleveland as a platinum level sponsor, as we service and partner with many members of this great organization. I also serve on the ACG board and am the co-chair of the programming committee. While we were all certainly disappointed that we had to cancel the May event at the Ritz, along with Shorby, especially with the perfect weather we would have had earlier this week, it's our hope that today's event will give our group the opportunity to hear an outstanding presentation, and also to give each of you the opportunity to network with other participants in the breakout rooms that will follow today's discussion. Today's conversation is with Dan Moore, who will be interviewed by Adam Kaufman. I'm not sure I can do their many accomplishments justice in a short introduction, but I will try briefly. Dan has been an entrepreneur his whole life, starting a tree service company he started in high school and expanding through a wide range of companies and industries, including automotive, defense, and advanced material related businesses. Dan's family office currently includes 18 portfolio companies, and their focus is on building long-term value without the constraints of outside investors. Dan is also active in many civic organizations and boards serving Northeast Ohio, including the Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland State University, the Metro Parks, Museum of Natural History, and many others. We're also lucky to have Adam Kaufman interviewing Dan today. Adam is an advisor and board member of fast growth companies, has been an advisor to Jumpstart CEO, and is a partner in a seed stage venture fund. Adam has vast experience with organizational leadership in both privately held companies and the nonprofit sector. He also currently hosts the Up To podcast, which features candid conversations with successful, humble leaders. I definitely recommend you check out his podcast in the future. And in the interest of doing our best to simulate the Shorby social event, I'd certainly encourage anyone to grab their favorite summer cocktail as they enjoy the discussions today. The presentation with Dan and Adam will run approximately 30 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of questions and answers. If you have questions for the Q&A session, please send them to Julia Zettel through the Zoom chat feature, and she will work to ask those questions during the Q&A session. Following Q&A, we'll have approximately 40 to 45 minutes of breakout rooms where each participant will have the opportunity to network with 3 separate groups of 4 to 6 others in a small group setting. Each breakout will be 12 to 15 minutes each. Don't forget, if you have questions as they're going through their presentation, please send them to Julia Zettel, who will accumulate them for the Q&A session. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dan and Adam to take it away. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. And hello to you, Dan.
Greetings. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
It's nice to be with you.
Tom's right. Your list of accomplishments is so vast. We won't spend time going over too much of it. But
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you have 38 patents. You have started or co-founded 30 companies. Where does this entrepreneurship in you come from? Were you born into a business family, or were you always tinkering with ideas in high school? Has this always been a part of your wiring?
I think I think part of it's genetic and part of it's environment. And I think my dad was a tinkerer. He was a physicist, and then he became a writer. So he did a lot of different things. And one of the things he loved to do is make things. And he contrived these gadgets in the basement. And I was always interested in mechanical things, and then finally got interested in how to make something better. And I think a lot of it came out of that whole venue of how do you make it better? What's the newness? And I'm not sure whether that's genetic or whether that's inherited, but it's a little bit of both, I think.
That relates to my next question. So many schools, I think every college and most high schools teach entrepreneurship now. Do you think entrepreneurship can be taught, or is this something an individual is born with certain innate character traits?
Well, I think it's a little bit of environment and a little bit of background and education, family experience, and that sort of stuff. I know that the reason they're interested in it is everyone wants to be working for themselves. I mean, 50% of the people, more than 50% of the people that want to go in business for themselves are doing it because they want to work for themselves. And they don't necessarily have a good reason, good idea. They just want to work for themselves. So I think that's why there's pressure on it. But I think a lot of it, I do think there's a test you can take which may have been shared with the group out there, and if it hasn't, it should be, which sort of tests what makes you an innate entrepreneur. And a lot of it has to do if you come from another country, you've taken the chance to do that. If your parents work at home or work for themselves, if you've been fired, it generally is a good
I noticed
thing.
that. I checked that box.
Yeah.
I was fired in my first job ever. So for once, it made me feel good.
I left just before I was fired.
Okay.
But I think you ought to go through that, and it's aimed at young people, because young people are more apt to be successful entrepreneurs than older people, because they have less to lose. We're all risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
The better educated we are, generally the more careful we are, and the more conservative about the jobs that we take.
And I know preparing for today, you and I were talking about the role of early stage companies in terms of job creation and job growth, and how people don't realize how much of new job creation comes from younger, newer companies. I spend a lot of time with Jumpstart here in Cleveland, and we're always focusing on starting new companies, not just growing larger old companies. I know you're interested in that.
Well, it's amazing that if you take 70% of the jobs created in the United States are created by companies that are 5 years old or less. So it's an enormous number. New companies are there to create jobs. Old companies are generally measured by how efficient they are. They want to get rid of people. So you can see why people are so interested.
Mm-hmm. And we're here today. You are an entrepreneur. I think when I moved to Cleveland about 20 years ago, I think about how back then I learned of certain people in the Cleveland community who were like the leaders of our ecosystem. And when I was asked to participate in this, I thought, of course, Dan's on the Mount Rushmore of Cleveland entrepreneurs. I told you that the other day. It was like you, Mal Mixon, and Stuart Cole, and maybe Al Ratner. And so
yeah, those are far higher up.
I don't know.
Mount Rushmore than I am.
But we're here today at the Cleveland Industrial Innovation Center. We're remaining socially distant appropriately, but our audience can't see it, but we're looking at some really high-tech military helmets right now. You're always thinking about innovation, aren't you?
Well, I think that newness is what was exciting to me, and how you create newness, how you staff for it, how you organize for it. And our goal has been to start one company every year, and another goal is to buy a company usually a wounded company of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now is the time to be doing stuff like that. I mean, there are going to be a lot of wounded companies out there, and there's a lot of cash available through fiscal stimulation. That
you went quickly over something I'd like to drill down on. The innovation side, you like the staff for it. So it's real trendy in America right now for companies to have a chief innovation officer, or to have some department where they can check the box and say we have innovation, some skunk works department. But you told me it's got to start with the hiring.
Well, it reminds me of the 1980s when everyone was worried about quality. And the Japanese were cleaning our clock with quality ideas. And so the immediate response was, we'll get a well-scrubbed, well-educated young person to be the quality manager of a company. And it never worked. It was always, you had to make quality organic. The company, every foreman is thinking about it. Everyone's looking at the charts and that sort of thing. And entrepreneurship is the same way. If you want to have an entrepreneurial company, and even if you're in a Rust Belt area, like the industrial Midwest. You need to have it, even if it's stamping or something that's not at all entrepreneurial. You've got to make it entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make it part of every business meeting.
Mm-hmm.
What's new, and you've got to measure people by newness, creativity, and.
So have you done that? Like, how do you hire for innovation? That's very interesting.
Well, it changes as you get older. When you start out, you're the energy, and you're the one that's the hard driver. And you hire people that have experience, and they tend to be older people. But now when you're older, and I'm older than I want to be, you end up.
You have a lot more hair than me. You look great.
You end up hiring people that are energetic, and they tend to be young. So we have a very young organization. If you look at the people under 35, most of the managers are in that.
So youth is a component of innovation, but what else? Because there might be plenty of young people who just aren't innovative, but they're very competent in some other part of the work life.
And for us, we want to have people that are creative, and oftentimes this involves people that are clever with mechanical things that engineering, and how do you come up with something better? But also a lot of the modern stuff, and we haven't been very involved with it, has to do with disintermediating the retail function by the Amazon and that sort of thing. And if you look at the top 5 companies 10 years ago, it was Mobil, or let's see, it was Exxon,
Mobil, Walmart.
Walmart was Apple, Microsoft, Berkshire Hathaway, and General Electric. That should be 5. And now Apple and Microsoft are both still on there. Those are cybernetic plays. But then Amazon, Alphabet, and Facebook are all sort of the new stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we are having a change. And that it's pretty easy to disintermediate retail. Like look at, so it's something that you don't have to be a mechanical wizard to do. Think of a different way of selling something over the internet, and you see it everywhere, and everyone can participate.
Let's take one example. I can't help but think about the military helmets. You've been doing helmets for a long time.
20 years.
20 years. And how many different ways can a helmet be formed? And I know you're going to say a lot of different ways. So spend a little time talking about how you've changed the technology in helmets.
Well, we started out, and all we wanted to do was make a ski helmet. It was a memorial. And so it violated my #1 rule of entrepreneurship, which is fill an unmet need.
Fill an unmet need is your number one rule.
#1, fill an unmet need that other people don't know about. And that's very important, that other people don't know about. But then it was a ski helmet, and we thought we could come up with good styles, and we couldn't. And our helmet wasn't particularly good. But what often happens with deals, and it's happened many times for me, is you start doing one thing, and it leads to something else. And so we flunked out of the ski helmet business. Okay. But we came up with an interesting innovation for military helmets, which put the company back on the map. And now Team Wendy supplies helmets to the special operations groups of 53 countries in the world.
Yeah. And you told me how like a green light means good guy and a red sensor is bad guy, so to speak, and the drones.
All sorts of gadgets go on.
Tremendous.
Night vision, gadgets that will identify friendlies to people that are doing close air support, helicopters and that kind of thing, so they can see with their goggles who the friendlies are.
And this is just one of your companies, and you mentioned you had to pivot away from ski helmets.
We're back to ski helmets.
Okay.
Yeah, for those of you that are out there, we make the best ski helmet in the world, and you can get it right off the internet.
What's the brand name that they would see?
Team Wendy.
Team Wendy. Okay, good. Commissions go to ACG for that, I guess. Okay. How do you decide, Dan, which opportunities to get involved in? Like, I know I'm peppered with so many pitch decks and proposals and investment opportunities. How do you decide when to jump in and when not to? Can you share a little bit about your decision making process?
Well, first of all, it's make versus buy, and the make is starting up companies, and the buy is buying companies. So that's the first decision. I think in today's environment, it's shifting a little bit towards buy, because there's some wounded companies out there, and there's lots of cash. There's lots of loaning. Getting money is easier than you. The equation for buying a company is how easy is it to finance, and what's the multiple of EBITDA that you have to pay for it. So that's getting a little more favorable. But the problem of trying to find new ideas to start, it gets more complicated as you get older, because when you're young, you're making 6 calls a day. You're seeing maybe 5 problems a day that you could try to solve. And starting a company, there is no question but that finding the unmet need that other people don't know about is by far the hardest part of it. Yeah. There are so many people that you see and I see that have tremendous enthusiasm, enormous spirit, but they have lousy ideas.
Yeah, I call that product market fit. Yeah. Sometimes there's an amazing invention, but if there's no marketplace for it, we don't just another cool widget to put in the back corner of the conference room. There's got to be a marketplace for it.
Right. So as you get older, the hardest problem you have is identifying these unmet needs. And that requires, in my opinion, you have to have people that are out in the trenches, that are walking through assembly plants and looking at drilling rigs and, hanging out with soldiers to find out what they need.
Their pain points, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's the critical thing, is finding the unmet need, I think, and trying to create an environment where it's automatic, where you don't have to worry about it. They dribble in, and you look at them and decide whether they're good or bad.
And how important is the idea versus the person pursuing the idea? I feel like the earlier stage of the business, it's more about the team of founders.
Yeah.
Because I think there's plenty of good ideas that can become great companies with the right team. But do you have a different view on that, or how much does it matter who is behind whatever idea you're considering?
I think the dynamic of teamwork is unbelievable. I mean, we'll have a problem, and these are usually engineering problems, that no one can solve. All the ideas are lousy. No one has come up with it. And you get together in a room with a few beers, some donuts, and 2 hours.
Beers and donuts, that's a secret to success. We now know how we got on Mount Rushmore.
But 2 hours later, you come up with the good and the bad. It has to be an open conversation. There are no bad ideas, and I think smart, creative, energetic people will come up with what the stumbling blocks are. But the hard part is still coming up with what the raw idea was. I mean, that's extremely difficult. That's the hardest part.
It is, and we're all wrong sometimes. We don't have 100% batting average.
But we're wrong most of the time. If you look at a typical private equity situation, you'll see maybe 30 companies that are looked at, maybe 1 or 2 that are picked. Out of 5, you'll find 2 you'll find 1 complete disaster that is embarrassing, 1 real winner, and then 3 that are sort of in between.
But in venture capital, even earlier stage, higher risk. 2 out of 10 might do well, yeah. And we might look at 100 to come up with the 10 that we actually get involved with.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a hard deal to find success in, but you got to take those chances.
I think that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we all have the tendency to drink a deal pretty. The girls are always prettier at closing time, and you tend to get enamored with an idea, and you have to really fight to be practical and logical. And I always go too long before killing an idea.
Do you rely on experts in your network to help you, like, do some due diligence on an industry, or what do you think of this? You might ask one of your colleagues before you jump into something. Do you rely on others to help you?
I do. I mean, we have a whole group of people that look at that are resident right here.
Oh, they're in-house.
Yeah.
Do you ever look outside for
Yeah,
expertise?
we do when there's real expertise needed. We don't look outside enough.
Right. Well, that was what I was getting at.
We always say, why didn't we see this fatal flaw?
Because you could probably get to almost anybody, so you could take advantage of those relationships and learn what they think about something you're considering.
We never, I mean, that's an absolutely key point, Adam, and absolutely important. Yeah.
You've seen quite a bit. You joke that you're getting older, but you have the wisdom that only comes over time in terms of you've been through so much in America with Watergate and the Vietnam era served. We had, the oil glut, we had the recession, we had the roaring 90s. You've seen a lot of ups and downs. As we've now gone through the pandemic and now this racial equality tension subject, what types of business opportunities are you beginning to think about coming out of this period of time in America?
Well, first of all, I would hate to pick, I'd hate to say I want to do something industrial or I want to disintermediate. I hate to box it in.
Okay.
But I think a couple of generalizations. One is that there are going to be some wounded ducklings out there. And they're perfectly good companies, excellent companies to invest in. Nothing wrong with it. The failure is not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
These will be available.
Okay.
And there's also a lot of capital available.
Yes.
There's fiscal, there are all sorts of new loan programs, both state programs and federal programs.
And private capital,
A lot of hungry money.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people don't think the stock market is going to be wonderful, but they're in it because there's nothing else to do, and they'll be that. And these companies are selling at multiples that are, generally in the fours.
So are you saying, though, because I think you don't like to take on outside investors for your M&A activity?
I think I have in the past, and Mal Mason and I have been in a bunch of deals together. And the reason I don't do it now, I'm sort of suspicious of myself because I hate to have my friends look at how stupid I am with some of these investments.
It's a lot of pressure to take on other people's money. It is.
Yeah,
a lot of pressure.
So we tend to do it ourselves, and we also tend to have resources here at our KIC facility, our Cleveland Industrial Innovation Center, that are pretty strong in this stuff. They're good at due diligence of ideas and good engineering, a lot of chemical experience, and micromolecular science stuff. So we're pretty good at it here. And
are there categories you're thinking about? If you don't have to name companies, but categories of subsets of industries that you think coming out of this pandemic period that might be right for more involvement with someone like you?
It's hard for an old dog to learn new tricks, but I think there are automotive ideas. One of them is we're making a lightweight brake rotor that I'm extremely excited with. It's harder than cast iron, but it weighs only 40% of the weight of the cast iron. So it takes like 35 pounds out of the unsprung weight of an automobile, which has a lot to do with the noise, vibration, harshness, feel of the car. So I'm excited about that. That's a new project.
That'd be like a create versus a buy.
That's a create, yeah. And that I think that's hard to get to. One idea that I've been kicking around is to form an association of young men that are in areas that are growing fast, and just have them sort of as a kitchen cabinet, not to try to compete in the businesses that they're in, but to look for opportunities in those businesses that are not being developed by the firm that they work for.
That's a really interesting idea. How could people maybe who are on this call learn more about that, or is there something?
So they could call, but what we're interested in is high growth action areas where, so it's not so much a support function, but it's a doing.
Yeah, peer to peer and active.
Like an example would be, there was one idea back which I never exploited, getting people that are used to the oil rig areas to think of a way that we could make drill pipe last longer by using a wonderful Lincoln Electric process to fill the areas where the drill rod gets worn the most. So you could recycle drill rod, the drill pipe, instead of throwing it out.
So that's something you passed on,
I passed on.
but it got pursued.
I don't know whether it's been pursued or not.
I in my own world, I call this the anti-portfolio, like good ideas that I said no to wrongly,
Yeah.
or that my partners and I would say no to. I know our mutual friend Stuart Cole has his lessons from the loo on bad decisions they make too. So it's
Well, Stuart Cole doesn't make too many bad decisions.
yeah,
He's extremely good.
it's
at
good.
what
We
he
can
does.
all learn though from things we either did do that we shouldn't have or should have done that we did not do.
Yeah, we learn more from our mistakes
Right.
than our success.
Right. Well, let me ask you another kind of big picture question, having seen as much as you have. If Cleveland was a stock, would you be buying Cleveland right now? Are you more bullish or more bearish on our economic or kind of geopolitical future?
Well, from what I do, good leadership is critical in a city and in a community. So we need to be sure that we're aiming at good leadership. But after that, Cleveland has what it takes. I mean, it has wonderful support organizations, many on this call today.
Absolutely.
Which are extremely important in deals like this. And it has wonderful research facilities. Probably well over $1 billion worth of government research. It's between 750 million and $1 billion is going on right here in Cleveland.
Case,
So,
Cleveland Clinic,
NASA,
right.
I mean, it goes. There are a lot of engineering.
The Dan Moore companies.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
But so I think we have what it takes here. We need entrepreneurs, and we're doing it, and we're probably educating more people with entrepreneurial activities than maybe we should be. But you have to do that. You don't know who's gonna do it and who isn't. So I think it's helpful. And of course we're not really in this whole field of the internet strong as we should be.
Right.
Everyone has an idea on what could sell over the internet. My advice is, when you think about it, do it. It's not hard to do.
Take the chance.
Take the chance.
Yeah.
Do it. You won't lose much money. And try.
It's a lot easier to start a company digitally than it used to be. The capital expenses of starting a real operating business with a manufacturing plant, all those other related expenses.
Much easier.
Right.
So young people can do that. And of course, the key to being a great entrepreneur is not having other people's money. So when you sell it, you get the whole thing yourself.
So you mentioned young people, and I just asked you to think about the future with Cleveland being a stock, so to speak. But I'm going to ask you to think backwards for a few minutes. So you're just coming out of university, and maybe you're like 21 years old. Maybe it's before you go to Harvard. I'd like to ask successful Uber achievers like you, if you could go back and talk to the younger version of yourself, the 21-year-old.
Back then?
Yeah. If you could give your younger self advice, what advice would you give your younger self? And you can't say, I wouldn't ride motorcycles in Tibet, because I know you love to do that, and you still do that. But other than that, what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I think if Mal was sitting here with us, he would agree. I think it's very important to have a group of equally motivated people that you talk with every day about your ideas. I used to have an organization called Founders Cafe, where we tried to create little tea groups, we call them, groups of maybe 10 people that would meet regularly and in a disciplined way discuss their new business ideas. That's one. So you need a tea group. I think the second one is you have to have an organized way of prioritizing your ideas. You've got to constantly be looking at. I like a list of 15, and the top ones, the ones that are number one, are really good, and you're serious about them. But you're thinking about other stuff as well, and you don't have to be disciplined in a business that you know.
So you think you did not do that well when you were younger?
I didn't do it as well as I do it now.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, now it's real important.
I like your tea group idea. I meet with a lot of entrepreneurs, And one thing I always tell them, I share a few pieces of advice with every entrepreneur, and one of them is to create an advisory group, a non-governing advisory group to hold them accountable, to brainstorm, a group of peers, or to add to their expertise, just to mix it up a little bit. It kind of reminds me a little bit about your T group idea, because not everyone has like a YPO forum like you had or like I had with Yale, but I think more entrepreneurs should have mentors and advisors around them, even if they're not giving them the ability to govern the company. It's the non-governing group of advisors.
It's part of it. It's a discipline which will align yourself a little better. I think I'm amazed at I had some of the tea groups in my office when I did Founders Cafe. There was one guy that had been working on a project for 2 years, and it was possibly the worst idea I'd ever heard of.
Okay.
And we went around the table and we talked about, he presented the idea and we talked about it. And he hadn't had any outside advice before. So it was criminal that this poor guy had worked 2 years on a project that was a bad idea.
Well, we're going to open it up in a few minutes to questions from the audience. Our 30 minutes have gone so fast, but I have one question submitted to me by our mutual friend, Stuart Cole. He wanted me to ask you, any close calls ever on your global motorcycle riding?
Well, unfortunately, Stuart, a close call is something that is photographed. If it's not photographed, it didn't happen.
No evidence, huh?
No evidence, yeah. But there have been a number of them. And they're generally embarrassing to talk about.
But you have been in Argentina, Europe, the Middle East on motorcycles.
Yes, in Africa, from Cape Town to Cairo. And I think the worst one happened in Tibet, where I was passing a motorcycle. I was passing a truck, and the truck boxed me against the opposite guardrail. And the motorcycle went under the truck and got run over. And I escaped with just a few bruises.
And you still like to ride?
Riding is a lot of fun.
Is that your
riding
favorite?
in the woods? I think is fun.
Is that your favorite activity when you're not working, or is there anything else you like to do?
Well, that's a hobby. I guess I have narrowed it down fairly. I don't play golf. I don't play bridge. Those take too much time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't golf. It takes 5 hours. I don't know.
But Velasano is one of my favorite things. And I think it becomes a nucleating point to get in shape, and we thank Stuart for that.
Raise so much money. Tremendous.
But also it has made a lot of older people much healthier.
It's good to have a goal on a calendar and know you have to get in shape for that.
Exactly.
Well, why don't we open it up and have some audience questions?
All right, thanks. The first question was from Mindy Marsden, and her question was, what was your very first innovation experience?
I think my first one was when I went to college and was a little short of cash, and set up a birthday cake concession. And to do it, I had to get the home addresses of all the students, and I wrote this letter that shamed their parents into getting them a birthday cake. And it was fun because I wasn't involved with anything at all in it. I had it all subletted. And so I didn't have to deliver the cakes or do anything, but I just made several bucks off each cake. And
you're such a fraud.
So that was probably the first one.
Good question.
All right. Dave Douglas asked, Dan said that, quote, a big mistake is waiting too long to kill an idea, unquote. Do you have specific metrics or rules that you use to determine the viability of an idea or product in development? Or, put another way, how do you determine the runway that you'll give an idea?
Well, it's a terrifically thoughtful question, and everyone fights with it. I noticed Google has put an artificial, I think it's two years, and I've got some things that I've worked on for 5 years and haven't succeeded with yet. I think 2 years is probably a pretty good. A lot of it has to do with your age. And when you get to be 80 years old, you can see the end of the runway. So you don't want to spend too much time with new ideas. And I think there are a lot of the early ideas I had were such good ideas that the person that was buying them was really as aggressive at getting them done as I was. So I think probably 2 years is probably a good idea if you're 80 years old. If you're younger and you've got a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of cash producing ideas, maybe it's a little bit longer.
It's really emotional though, isn't it? To like let go of something you've been
Oh
working.
my God, it's terrible.
I know the person who asked the question, he's the producer of my podcast, so he's probably thinking, how long before I get rid of Adam? It's such a horrible podcast host, but it's hard to let go, isn't it?
It's extremely hard to let go, and your psyche is in it, and that's why you need people that are outside looking in,
Like the advisory group or the tea club.
Yeah, saying, what do you do? When is this going to end?
Absolutely.
And pretty soon you listen to them.
Hold you accountable.
Exactly.
Right.
Good question.
John Hollister asks, Dan, tell us a little bit about how you have been able to bring your entrepreneurial skills to bear at Cleveland Metro Parks to make it into one of the most dynamic nonprofit organizations in the country, and in turn, make the Cleveland Metro Parks the single most influential force in the future of Cleveland.
Wow. Well, thank you, John. That's very nice of you to say that. And I think the nice thing about the Metro Park is Brian Zimmerman, who runs it, is very entrepreneurial himself, and yet very organized. Running a public company is one thing. Running a public company that is a governmental agency is another. And he's done a wonderful job. And Clevelanders have supported this endeavor very well. And I think what we try to do is we try to be entrepreneurial, but we're definitely boxed in to what you can do with a governmental agency. But I think it's a wonderful group of people managing it.
You were the board president there, right?
We rotate. There are 3 of us, and we rotate every 3 years.
Okay.
And so we have a fresh look at being the board president. But the board president conducts the meeting, but doesn't really have any more power than any other. And I think we've been very lucky in having a variety of skills among the commissioners, which has been helpful. We've got a little bit of right brain, left brain, and some very good knowledge. Very good knowledge, and one of our members is terrific when it comes to real estate. So it's a good mix of skills.
Okay, he actually tagged that with a follow-up question. Could you tell us a little bit about what the Metro Parks is doing?
Well, we should put Brian on this call. But I think the Metro Park is first digesting the lakefront, and that's a major problem. We're trying to connect every member of every person in Cleveland within a certain amount of minutes from a Metro Park or a trail that leads in the Metro Park. I think that's a good idea.
That's an ambitious goal.
We're trying to connect as many of these trails as we can. And of course, there's some wonderful goals that some are probably more expansive, and I hate to even mention some of them.
Well, that could be maybe a breakout session or a topic for another day.
Yes.
Yep, on the Metro Parks.
But thanks for those questions, John. And when our new levy comes up, please open your pocketbooks.
Andrew Bader asks, Dan, any advice for working with business partners, and have you had any co-founders or business partners yourself over the years?
Well, let's see. I'm thinking of. I think there have been some people asked to be business partners. I remember one, and Tom and Brent Ballard Tom McKee and Brent will know this person, who was given an opportunity to get a piece of Invacare instead of an employee of Calpe, who decided that it was probably best that he get paid by on an hourly basis. Turned out to probably be a bad investment for him. Tom, you remember who that is?
He's smiling.
But I think in generally, I haven't had too many people that have been like lawyers and accountants involved. But I have always been more interested in having partners that are skilled in the area, in this particular area, and sometimes they're hard to find. But I think that helps a lot.
Okay, we'll close with this question. You mentioned the challenges with innovating in a big company. What steps do you think those types of companies need to take to truly innovate?
Well, first of all, it's got to be led from the top, and it has to be organically part of the organization. And what that means is that you have objectives that have newness in them, and for everyone. For someone who's running a machine, preference is given to someone who thinks of good ideas to improve the rate or the cost, reduce the cost. I think it has to be in job descriptions. It has to be in the annual appraisal. You have to be looking at it. Probably more importantly is in every meeting, you should have a little piece of it, which is newness, and that gets people oriented to listening to what the leader of the company really wants. And of course, you got to sell the leader of the company. I mean, some people will flat say that, look, we're a stamping company. We're not going to do a proprietary product, or we're not going to get into this other area. And that's a mindset. And I think the people within the company have to be the kind of people that say, yeah, we're a stamping company, but what about doing hot stamping? What about doing something else? Here's the math of doing that. So they have to help them. It has to be organic enough so that the people within the company are telling the leader of the company what he or she could be doing, rather than just answering questions that the C-suite people might ask.
This is really hard though, Dan, isn't it? This is why so many startups are bought by old line businesses, because they don't have the internal innovation. I think the ultimate example of that is all the big hotel companies, Marriott, Radisson, Sheraton, none of them thought of Airbnb. So it took a few young people on the outside to come up with this completely disruptive business.
Yeah.
I have a sense that you, from the top, host innovation better than a lot of these really large companies that are often acquiring the innovation to take into their business.
Yeah, and then there are a few exceptions, like Amazon and Google. I mean, these are very innovative companies, and
they're pretty young.
They're very young, and they're hiring carefully. They're hiring the people that have a high amount of energy, that get passionate about things, that have that may be structured, but also have an ability to be creative outside of the structured skill that they
and they have license to be creative and fail. They're not looked down upon if a project doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. But I think passion is a huge part of it. And in an interview, you can measure passion. It's not like asking a question. Well, what are you excited about? And if someone says, well, I like to play video games, you sort of back away a little bit, discreetly back away.
Well, we're not going to play any video games this afternoon, but I think we're going to do some breakout sessions, which is a form of technology. So why don't our host take it from here? But thank you for the general session. Terrific. I'd shake your hand right now, but we want to be safe. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Dan. Dan,
thank you very much. Nice to be with all of you.
Just to wrap things up here for 30 seconds, want to thank everybody for participating. Our plan is to send out a survey, certainly interested in the group's feedback as we're thinking about our fall programming and making sure that, we bring kind of the most valuable content that we can, to the extent we have to do that virtually. Certainly interested in the input from the folks who participated in this first event. I'd certainly like to especially thank Dan and Adam for the discussion today. You guys did a great job. Really, really appreciate your engagement, participation, enthusiasm. this is normally the time that I'd walk across the stage and give you a small gift as a token of our appreciation. You can rest assured those are in the mail to Julia, from Julia, to come over to each of you guys at your offices. On behalf of the ACG board, we just want to wish everyone a happy and healthy summer. We've got a great programming lineup set up for the fall. The current plan is that we'll be delivering our first few fall programming events virtually. We'll obviously continue to monitor state guidelines and determine when we can transition back to having some in-person events or some hybrid of those two. I guess we'll find out as things unfold. Certainly hope everybody appreciated moving quickly through some of those rooms, get the opportunity to meet a lot of different people. I think, personally, it's pretty neat to just get put together with different folks who maybe you wouldn't talk with at a regular event. Julia sent out links to everybody's LinkedIn profiles. So to the extent you didn't have a chance to, exchange contact information, all of that information is there for everybody. So I guess with that said, thanks again to everybody for your time, and look forward to seeing you at future ACG events in the future, whether they be in person or virtually.